Hey everyone, welcome to the Garden Guest series. Today we have Mr. Derrick on, who has his PhD. He is the Education and Horticultural Therapy Program Administrator. He's been working for the University of Tennessee Gardens since 2012. He's the Education Administrator, as I just mentioned, and he's basically responsible for directing education programs and horticultural therapy programs for UT Gardens of Knoxville. So he's very passionate about his job, and he's going to share with us today some really cool tools and trainings that we could get involved with, and tell us the importance of therapy in gardening.
So the first term that you may have heard is horticultural therapy. Another term that's often used interchangeably is the term therapeutic horticulture. And so there is a difference between those, and I'll go through that in just a minute. So first term, horticultural therapy. And so that's the use of horticulture in a clinically defined role, usually often with defined goals and objectives set up by a healthcare team for an individual's part of their active treatment. And so providing goals and objectives for using horticulture in a therapeutic way to help improve outcomes for individuals that may have a health condition or a physical condition. And so that has to be led by someone who is a trained therapist. The other term that you may have heard or people have interchangeably used is therapeutic horticulture. And I believe I've been able to share my screen now. And so therapeutic horticulture is similar to horticultural therapy in that it is using horticulture in a way to provide some kind of therapeutic benefit. That often doesn't have to be done in a clinical setting, and you may or may not have a clinical team, but you will have somebody have some experience and some training in using horticulture in a therapeutic way. And so again, the difference really has to do with, is it a type of healthcare intervention or interaction, or is it more of a community-based, wellness-based intervention that is done by someone that has some experience working with horticulture and the benefits, therapeutic benefits. So a couple things that sometimes people get a little confused on, is what's the difference? And so, this one question is, just because someone has a disability or a health condition and they garden, does that mean they're doing horticultural therapy? And so a lot of times we might think, well, someone maybe has a disability, maybe they have use a wheelchair, maybe they have a medical condition, and they come to our garden program, and so we're providing therapy for them. And the reality is we're not. And so this is, a garden program can provide a service that may or may not be therapy, and it also may or may not be therapeutic. And what really makes the difference between I'm just somebody that gardens, and it has to do with what our goals are of the program we work with. What are the goals and objectives? How do we document that? How do we measure those outcomes? So for example, when we're looking at in health and wellness, someone that may use a wheelchair, they may not have any challenges or issues with gardening. They may have been using a wheelchair for a long time, maybe all their life, and they have learned how to adapt and how to set up their garden space to meet their needs so that they can utilize it to the best of their ability. And so that person doesn't need therapy. Somebody that maybe has gone in and had an injury, maybe they've gone and had an accident and are going through physical rehabilitation. Maybe they used to garden and maybe they don't know how to garden now. That's a time when, as part of their treatment, as part of the rehabilitation, a horticultural therapy program could be very beneficial for them to help them relearn skills or learn new skills related to gardening. There are some benefits to gardening, both using the idea of horticultural therapy and also just gardening in general. And so research and data shows that gardening has the ability to reduce our stress. And so this has been measured with a variety of studies. Some of those include horticultural therapy programs, and examples are veterans program utilized horticulture, and they measured cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And so they measured changes in that cortisol level after interacting in a garden program. And they showed with taking part in a garden program for 30 minutes, and there was reduced levels of that stress hormone in the individual. And so then that would show that there is a physiological benefit to gardening and being part of a garden program. Increased mood. So the sense of satisfaction the sense of being around plants. There's a term you may have heard, it's called biophilia, and it's this interaction or interconnection with living things, including plants and animals. And so being around those things shows, improves our mood, makes us feel better. Physical activity is obviously one of the ones that are, particularly us as gardeners and master gardeners probably know a lot, is getting out there, digging in the dirt, provides a lot of opportunities for increased physical activity. The CDC actually even lists gardening as a moderate physical activity. So it's a great way to get physical instead of, maybe you don't like running, maybe you don't like going to the gym, but if you got a garden, you can go outside and get your physical activity in by just gardening. And so again, a horticultural therapy program that works with people, let's say if we're working with a population of individuals who may have obesity, that would be one of your main goals, is increase physical activity. And so you would develop your program around that, and how to interact and develop the program based on the needs of the individuals. Increase social interaction. So gardening is a very social thing. We work with a lot of facilities, and so one of the big things that we have in our programs is it gives people an opportunity to come together and talk about shared garden experiences, talk about what they've learned, and also just be in a room with other people or be in a garden setting with other people. Social isolation can be an issue with individuals who may have a disability or health condition, or maybe in assisted living facilities. And so the ability to provide a space for that social interaction is important. And increased nutrition, again, using the ability to grow vegetables is another great benefit to horticultural therapy programming. And one of, this works with all populations, but one group that there's been some research on is children particularly. So we're developing programs that deal with obesity and food insecurity, like I said, in urban youth settings. Some of the studies have found that children who often are picky eaters sometimes have challenges with trying new things. And the studies have that they've produced was that they found that children that grow their own plants, grow their own vegetables and start them from seed and grow them and then harvest them, are more likely to try those new vegetables. And so hopefully through that interaction can increase their interest in eating more fruits and vegetables, which a lot of children, particularly who maybe have obesity or are in an urban setting, have food insecurity issues, have less opportunities. And so a horticultural program can give that opportunity to increase someone's nutrition. And then another thing we do a lot with our programs is, the idea of enrichment. So educating about plants, educating about how to care for plants. It also helps with cognitive abilities, helps maintain cognitive abilities, and even potentially improve cognitive abilities among different populations. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the programs that we have here at the Gardens, and talk about the history and how they developed. So we started our programs, our therapeutic programs, in 2012 when I started working here. And kind of started with a first session. I think one of the first ones we offered was the Cancer Support Community of East Tennessee has had a monthly meeting, and they invited us to come out and do a workshop on herbs. And so we went out there and developed that workshop for that population. And then we also started doing tours for some of the memory care or assisted living facilities that work with people who have dementia and Alzheimer's, and coming to the Gardens. And from that, we started creating our own program where we were offering sessions for a variety of populations in the Knoxville area. And so we and we're going to go into more detail about those and kind of how they started. I also have experienced the opportunity to consult with other programs that are wanting to start therapeutic programs in the area. And we've also done a little bit of garden design, therapeutic garden design for a mental health hospital here in the Knoxville area. So, since 2012, we have continued to grow the program. We've served over 7,700 individuals and 270 healthcare staff with our therapeutic programs here at the University of Tennessee Gardens. And as you notice, last year we were working with about 17 different agencies. And so those agencies, we go out to them, the assisted living facilities, twice a month. We do a program for them. And obviously you can look at some of the numbers of participants dropped a little bit last year. And really what happened was in March, once COVID hit, we were not able to go into those facilities. And so we had some things to do. We had to change how we did our programming a little bit. So, obviously we were going in person to facilities. And because of COVID-19 and wanting to not spread the disease, the facilities changed the rules of who could come and who could visit. And so we had to adapt things. We had to create some new things, and some of what we had to do is wait, until hopefully there's a vaccine and the safety of the residents is less, and we can go back in. So one of the things we did last year in particular was we developed garden kits. And so these kits were based on our activities that we would have been doing, but we were able to put them together with instructions and offer assistance to the activity directors. And so we would deliver those kits to the facility, and then they would use those to do the garden program on their own, since we weren't able to come into that. We've also worked some with Alzheimer's Tennessee, and we've actually started in-person or virtual programs with them. And I'll talk a little bit more of those details in just a minute. So again, we at the UT Gardens work with assisted living, long-term care, memory care facilities, and that's a majority of what programs we worked with. And one of the reasons that this works really well for those groups and those facilities are they're mandated to have activities, and so they're supposed to have interventions and activities for the residents to keep them busy, to keep them occupied, to help maintain cognitive functioning and other physical and mental functioning as well. And so a lot of these facilities do have some garden space that has been built for them as part of the creation of the facility. And so and some of that space is accessible to their residents. And so it makes sense that gardening activities are a good fit. And so we would go to these facilities twice a month doing a 1-hour program. And a lot of our program was developed on both inside and outside activities using what garden spaces that we had there. We also offered several programs to senior living facilities. And so these are facilities for older adults who live in a community setting. Those programs, again, were offered twice a month. We've developed some vocational programs for individuals with intellectual disabilities and other disabilities that we have here at the Gardens. We work with veterans. We've done some behavioral health work and some work with schools, education programs in the region. So again, our assisted living facilities focused a lot on socialization, fine and gross motor skills, physical activity, reminiscing. So particularly individuals who have dementia or Alzheimer's, reminiscing activity is a good opportunity. And we share a lot, have them discuss and share some of their experiences. And, with this age of participants, they still, a large majority of those individuals did garden when they had their own homes, or they can remember stories of gardening when they were children with their grandparents or their parents. And so it gives them opportunity to share that memory and experience that. Another element that we've found when we work with this population is this idea, sense of purpose. And so instead of just going in and watching TV all day or sitting around, the gardening activities give them opportunity of things to do, to see things grow, to get back and feel like they're doing something important, because they are. Some of these facilities, when we plant vegetables and they harvest those, and some of the culinary the cooks and chefs will use those in meals or snacks for them. Some of the residents will go out there and we've got grow tomatoes, and tomatoes are a favorite vegetable for a lot of the folks, and they can share stories about growing up and they're growing tomatoes at home on their own. And so they can go and snack on some tomatoes out in the gardens. And then enrichment, again, the education about gardening, sharing things like scientific names and more details about how plants grow and survive, how to propagate plants, are all ways to provide opportunities for cognitive stimulation for residents of these facilities. Senior living facilities are a little different. We focus a lot on socialization, physical activity, enrichment, and just enjoyment in general with gardening activities. We have done several vocational programs over the years, including working at several of the high schools in the area. And so we're working with their special education programs to provide horticulture vocational training that can also translate into other vocational opportunities for these residents. We also more recently have been working a lot with Tennessee School for the Deaf, providing a vocational program for them. And we also work with a program at UT called Future. And this is a program for individuals who are at the university have an intellectual disability, and it's a special program, specialized program for them that they end up with a certificate through vocational rehab opportunities. And so they do an internship with us. And so we work with them in the garden as interns here. Tennessee School for the Deaf, we actually, last year we had a student that was a paid intern for us. And the program we work with there is called their Comprehensive Adult Program. So they're an individual that may have an intellectual disability or some other disability, and they're providing skills to learn how to go out and get a job once they graduate. And so we had a student here working during the pandemic. That all had to stop, obviously. And since that time, we aren't able to go have them come here because of their guidelines. And so we've been providing virtual programming for them using weekly video sessions and interaction with them. So trying to continue the horticultural knowledge skills development for those students, even though we can't do that in person. And we also do veterans programs. So in 2017, we developed and piloted a program called Veggie. And that program worked with veterans who had PTSD and other behavioral health challenges. What we found with that was that our garden program helped reduce their depression, anxiety, and stress through taking part in a weekly gardening program. We also currently work with Tennessee Agribility Project, and we provide horticultural therapy workshops for veterans throughout the state as a way to help connect veterans to agribility and extension and opportunities for them to learn how to become farmers. And so we're looking at continuing that collaboration with several other grants that we're working on with them. And then behavioral health, we've worked with Cherokee Health. They have a day service program where we work, we would come in and do garden programs. And we also do employee wellness programs right now with the university. So we provide gardening programs to help improve wellness of employees at the university. We've done some consulting in garden design. These are some designs from Peninsula Hospital, which is a behavioral health hospital here in Knoxville. And so they came to us and they had some garden spaces that were part of their intensive inpatient units. And so they wanted to have a place for the patients there to come out and be in the garden, and also their staff. And so I got just a quick photo of kind of what that looks like. And so this is a very small courtyard area that on the left you can see kind of where it started with just grass. This picture on the right is the garden that we planted with, this is about 2 years into it, so it had the plants have matured a little bit. One of the goals when we're developing gardening, therapeutic gardens, is looking at plants and safety and toxicity, particularly in a mental health or behavioral health setting. We don't want plants that could be used for harming somebody. If it's a tree that you can break off a branch and use as a weapon, or if it's a tree that's big enough that someone can maybe climb and elope and get out of the facility. And so all those are considerations we have to put in when we're developing garden designs for those populations. So, if you want to start your own program, there's a lot of opportunities in the area, and there are master gardeners around the country that do therapeutic programming for a variety of populations. And so these are just some pointers and tips to think about when you're doing that. And so, I think if you think about as a master gardener, you may have heard about the extension planning process. And I think some of that is kind of how you can think about when you wanted to start a program. And so one of those things are, what is the need? And who are the people in your community that you could serve? Is it assisted living facilities, or is it school programs for children who have intellectual disabilities? Are there drug and alcohol treatment programs that could benefit from garden programs? And then one of the next steps you want to think about is what evidence exists to support that program development. And so that's looking at research and looking at what other groups and other organizations are using horticulture in a therapeutic setting for those populations, and learning how they develop their program and implement their program. And then ultimately you want to define kind of what you want to do. Are you trying to do just a garden program with populations that maybe don't get opportunities to garden, or you want to do more of a therapeutic program where you have real specific therapeutic goals and objectives developed for them and measure those outcomes and show improvement based on those interactions that you've provided for them? And then obviously the next things you can think about as developing programs, is who do you want to collaborate with in your community? What businesses, what organizations, maybe donating garden materials, setting your goals and objectives. And, even if you're doing a regular program, you still have some goals and objectives. They're not going to necessarily be therapeutic if you're just doing a garden program. But once you determine, am I doing a therapeutic program or not, will help you set up what objectives and goals you want to have. And then you need to determine, how you're going to assess and document those things. How are you recording improvements from the interactions that you provide in the garden program? And that can help you with funding, obviously, because that is always going to be an issue, is how do you afford the garden programs? How do you afford potential staffing at a facility if you want to develop a program and go into more details that way, or just be able to pay for the plants and containers. And so those are all questions to start thinking about, and then looking for grants and opportunities to partner with universities that maybe want to do research or have the ability to write grants for different projects that you're looking at doing. And that's something you can obviously do with your extension agent that you work with, of looking for funding to try to help fund some of those programs that you want to do. And so at the university, we have, there's some ways to get involved if you're interested. Number one, and I'm going to talk specifically right now about the UT Gardens, but this can also relate to other master gardener or extension opportunities that you might have throughout the state. Here at the Gardens, we do look for volunteers. We were starting to move in the phase of developing a volunteer training for master gardeners last year, and then COVID hit, and so that kind of put things on the back burner a little bit. But we need help here at the Gardens, particularly with maybe implementing programs, maybe helping grow plants. When we do a program, you need to have plants. So either you need to buy the plants or grow the plants. And so you have to think about timing of when to sow the seeds or when to propagate the plants to have them ready. Training opportunities. So again, we're looking at developing a training program for master gardeners related to some therapeutic horticulture programming. There's a grant we're working on right now that hopefully, if we get funded, we'll be able to do kind of a statewide training that we'll do for individuals and give them skills and information about how they're working with different populations and how to incorporate that into your programming. And then they're networking. And so that's one great way also, is learning what's going on out there in the state in a therapeutic setting, and learning from other people. So one group that I started a couple years ago, I've just renamed it on Facebook, is the Tennessee Horticultural Therapy Network. And that is an informal network where people can join on Facebook and communicate ideas. And the next step with that group is I would like to start doing some meetings and calls to kind of start meeting some other people to be involved to help build some of the therapeutic programs we might be offering in the area. There are other regional networking groups, and you can find that on American Horticultural Therapy Association's page. Most of them, there's several up in the Northeast, one California, Colorado, and so there's some more formal groups that have developed a nonprofit off to run for the region, and others are more informal, which is this group of people that use gardening for therapy. They interact together and they maybe have meetings every so often to help learn and help build what they're doing in the state. And then obviously the American Horticultural Therapy Association, I'm the president-elect for that organization. It is a professional association for horticultural therapy, but they also there's also a place to find information about horticultural therapy and network with others that use horticulture as therapy. So again, volunteering, UT Gardens, here we do have some opportunities, and once as we move out of COVID and have more opportunities with as the vaccines are more readily available, we'll be able to start doing more of those types of programs again, and really start incorporating volunteers. And one thing that volunteers are really helpful for, particularly master gardeners can help out, is if you say you go to an assisted living facility and they have a garden, they may have an activity director that has no garden experience. They may have some residents that are interested in gardening. And I've had several facilities I worked at where those people were out there watering and pulling the weeds and taking care of the plants. But if someone has dementia or Alzheimer's, as that disease progresses, their ability to continue doing that changes. And so you might have some residents that are really able to garden and have some great gardening skills, but that may change and fluctuate over the years depending on the new residents coming in, or the progression of their disease. And so one of the things that volunteers can help is to help with educating, obviously, the staff there and residents there, but also help with maintaining those plants, watering those, coming in maybe more regularly than even I could do, this twice a month, and helping remind the residents, hey, I'm here today, we're gardening, we're going out there, and you want to come out and help? And that way, it helps keep that program going and keep that program successful. We do have some training opportunities coming up this year. One is we're going to do a horticultural therapy symposium. It's going to be virtual. It's set for May 14th to 15th, and we don't have registration up for that, but we're working on that in the next few weeks. We'll have that going, and that'll be a symposium for interested individuals who want to learn how to use gardening as a therapy. AHTA does have some webinars on horticultural therapy in the community, and those are free. I think there's one tonight, this evening, that's going to be offered. And then the regional groups also have some other webinars that are free. Some are for members and some for not, so you can kind of just look around and see. One group is Mid-Atlantic Horticultural Therapy Network, has several workshop series that they've started this year. So we do want to develop a training program for volunteers, and that program would be most likely developed virtually right now, where it could be someone from around the state could come and take part in that program. And we're waiting on some approvals for the grant to move forward with that. But so probably sometime this next year, we'll be sending out information about that training and how that's going to look. And then one other thing that we've just started this year, we're rolling out this fall, is a horticultural therapy certificate at the University of Tennessee. And so this is an online accelerator program for 9 hours of college credit. It'll deal with, there's 3 courses, and it'll be offered starting in the fall and finish up in the middle of spring 2022, and we'll offer it yearly. And the coursework deals with horticultural therapy, specifically an introduction to horticultural therapy and how to do that, how to plant it. It's designed for people that are interested in learning more. It's also designed for people who are professionals out there, maybe therapists that are wanting to enhance what they're doing with their programs. And we're modeling the courses to help. We're working on to qualify for professional registration, which is something that, if you're a therapist, it could be an additional credential that you might want to have with your clients or individuals. So I do want to share my email. It's dstowell@utk.edu. And if you have any questions, if you're interested in any of the workshops we have, either the symposium that will be in May, or the certificate program, if you want to find out more, you can send me an email. And again, I'll probably, once we have all the registration set up, we'll send it out to all the master gardeners also in the state, so you can see what's going on and potentially sign up for that.
Derrick, this is Tombbins, the county agent here. I got on a little late. I had another program going on, but I'm glad you're here, and very good presentation. I was up there with Katie Bishop, who introduced you a little bit a couple years ago for one of your workshops. Very excellent. We learned a lot, and I've shared a lot of it with my master gardeners. And some of them are asking for more materials. I'm wondering, do you have a website or a database someplace where you find that stuff, or do you go to the American Horticulture?
We do have 2 websites on the UT Gardens website listing kind of what we do. One thing I'm working on is I have an intern this semester, kind of put together some more research that could potentially be utilized. And then I could also, if someone has any specific, like if they're looking for specific information, I can help direct them. There are some books out there. There's a couple of college textbooks, but also some other program books that are used for developing programs that are very helpful. One of those is a book by Bibby Moore called Growing with Gardening. And that was actually created by North Carolina University. It's out of print, and you kind of have to search, and every once in a while I'll find a copy online that I can get. And it provides a calendar of activities talks about therapeutic goals, and tells you what to do throughout the year to not only lead the activity, but how to prepare the materials to do the activity. And it's probably one of the best books that I've found out there, and we need a new revision of that, but it's a great, that's a good resource. You might be able to find that through like interlibrary loan from your local library or something also out there. And HTA does have, they have a magazine that's published. That's a members only thing, and then they do have a journal called the Journal of Therapeutic Horticulture that is available. A lot of times, if you're part of a university, you can log in and get access to that. And then there's also a lot of open source research research journals now that do have some postings and some information about horticultural therapy research particularly.
Do you make any recommendations, or is there any place or source for tools and special gadgets and things?
Yeah, so with a lot of the groups I work with, often we haven't had a lot of individuals with the physical disabilities, so I don't use a lot of specific tools. However, there are some tools that I've used in the past, and I found I tend to just search online, and I'm kind of cheap, so I'm looking for the best deal, and I look around. But there's some adaptive gardening tools that have different lengths of handles and things that people use that I've just found online. It's been a while since I bought them. A lot of times too, each person's different, so learning what tool works for somebody or how to modify or adapt it, you can find online. Some Corona tools have some little trowels that have an extendable handles that you can twist and then extend it longer. I found some of those in different places, just at garden centers around too in the past.
Are there, I know you're sort of unique. Are there other universities that have hired someone similar to you that you network with?
Yeah, around the country there are a few. We have, and those also are a lot related to the certificate programs that are offered, and one of those particular is Rutgers University. They have a certificate program, and I think a minor or a bachelor's degree you can get in horticultural therapy. A guy named Joel Flagler is up there, and then Gary Altman is now helping take over. I think Joel's retiring soon. And then those programs also worked a lot with master gardeners through the Rutgers system. University of Florida has their certificate program, and they have a greenhouse down there, and horticultural therapy greenhouse that they developed several years ago. Colorado State has a program with individual who has a program called Horticultural Therapy Institute. So those are certificate programs, and so they kind of have some interactive programs out there. So those are kind of the big ones. Rutgers, I would say, as a university. And then we work a lot, a lot of horticultural therapists tend to also be independent contractors, and so they develop their own businesses. And so in the state of Tennessee, there are 2 registered horticultural therapists, and there's a handful of other people using horticulture as therapy or using it as a therapeutic means. And so that's part of what I'm trying to develop with that networking group, is to try to start developing that network a little bit more.
Fantastic. Anybody else have any questions if they want to?
Yes, you know me, Tom. I'm a veteran myself, and I was very interested on that program that you were talking about in regards with the veterans with PTSD. Mm-hmm. Do you have a website that I can go to and get some more information?
Yeah, I can send you. If you go to our UT Gardens website and type in, go to our horticultural therapy, I can put a link on here in just a second. I'm trying to pull that up. I published the one article on that, a couple articles related to that work. And I do know the grant we're working on with Agribility is a partnership with a group that's, and I can't remember the name right now, I apologize. Stephanie Tross she is working on developing a program that's going to eventually be offered throughout the state, where they work with the VA to do counseling, and then they have volunteers build their garden beds. And then, so one of the things that we're looking at with this project is where we can connect master gardeners to help with the technical gardening aspect of that, not necessarily doing therapy, but follow up, hey, how's your garden going? How do we help? And so that's what we're hoping gets funded, and that will be a really good partnership and opportunities that part of what that training we would offer is kind of how to do that program. I'm looking up my website link specifically. Our gardens website is utgardens.tennessee.edu, but I'm going to give the horticultural therapy specific link, and there's a couple articles that I've published down below.
I wanted to thank Derrick. This is Katie.
Again.
And I want to stress to the master gardeners out there, and you can probably speak to this, that just because you have a garden program, you're not a garden therapist. So if master gardeners are going to schools or church groups or something of that kind and establishing some sort of garden club, that they're really not allowed to call themselves the garden therapy group, that
right.
they really must speak to just, this is a garden club or fun time in the garden or something else, and not to clarify that, they can't call themselves garden therapy.
Right. And that's a really important point, Katie. And yeah, so, let's think about, you've all heard people, or you've seen the bumper stickers that fishing's my therapy, or that shopping's my therapy. And we need to, I think that's the part where people get, we've kind of, the media has particularly helped misinformed us is, something can be therapeutic for me. And as a individual, I have the ability to, maintain and manage my mental health, my behavioral health, pretty well. Most of the time. I still need help every once in a while, but like many people. But if I'm what's considered is a healthy individual, I know how to eat healthy. I know how to exercise. I know how to deal with stress. And for me, when I say gardening is my therapy or fishing is my therapy, that's a stress management skill that people have. Not everybody has that ability to say, I'm stressed, I need to go fishing, or I'm stressed, I need to go out in the garden. And that's where a therapist who is trained in therapeutic modalities and program development implementation, it helps people that need those additional helps to do that. And so, yes, just because you're out in a garden, and gardening is therapeutic, doing a garden program, particularly even with kids, helps increase attention span and reduce ADHD, just through the gardening. It doesn't necessarily mean you're providing therapy for them. And that could get, using the saying that I'm a therapist without any kind of credential does provide some challenges, could potentially legally, and we don't want to do that. But you as a volunteer could help provide the background and assistance needed to garden and do programs like that.
How many credit hours, or let's say years, does it take? Is it a 4-year program, or is it a 2-year program to become competent, or at least get the certificate or whatever it takes to do the work?
So the certificate that we're offering here is a 9-hour credit certificate, and that focuses on 3 courses: Introduction to Horticultural Therapy, Horticultural Therapy Program Management, and Horticultural Therapy Programming and Techniques. So that would be a certificate. And so you say, I have a certificate in that. That doesn't mean you're a therapist. It doesn't mean you're a certified horticultural therapist, because that doesn't exist right now. So the minimum to become professionally registered as a horticultural therapist is a bachelor's degree. And it doesn't have to be in horticultural therapy, but you can have a bachelor's degree in other disciplines. And then you have to have a coursework to support the horticultural therapy. So that would be 9 hours of horticultural therapy, 12 hours of plant sciences, because you have to know about plants, and then and at least 12 hours of human science, so psychology, counseling, those types of classes, and then an internship. It's a 480-hour internship. So if you already have a bachelor's degree, you could get registered professionally, in probably about a year, depending on how you get all your courses, what other courses you have under there. Now, for somebody that wants to be somebody running, or let's say I want to do therapeutic horticulture, and I work with, I'm a master gardener, I want to learn how to do more, taking part in the certificate program, or taking part in workshops and symposiums can give you some beginning skills to go out and do programs and work with people with disabilities, or work with people with health conditions. And so that's something that also is important. You know, just because I garden doesn't mean I may have the skills to know how to garden with somebody, let's say somebody that has Alzheimer's. And so as someone advances in their disease, confusion becomes more of an issue. And so some examples, sometimes a patient or a resident may try to ingest a plant. And so knowing that's an issue with that population, I know that I'm not going to select toxic plants to take into that facility. So I have to be careful and have to learn on top of that. So that's where, you know, some training like in the symposiums and workshops we do can give you some skills working with the clients and making choices about what plant materials are going to be appropriate for those residents or specific population you're working for.
I have a question. I see we have similar tastes in plaid shirts. I thought it was kind of funny. And that is there a program in similar like yours in Georgia where people are reaching out from master through the UT extension in Georgia?
That's a good question. I don't know if there is a group in Georgia at the extension or university in Georgia. I do know in Atlanta there is a group called Trellis Horticultural Therapy, and it's a nonprofit that was started by some therapists down there that do programming in the city of Atlanta. And you know, that's one of the things I'm trying to do with some of the future research that I'm going to be developing is sometimes we don't know a lot about who all is doing what, and so we need to learn more. You know, even let's say in Tennessee, you know, there is a group in Maryville that does, it's called Special Growers, and they work with adults with intellectual disabilities. And so doing horticulture vocational work. And so there's that kind of work going on that we aren't documenting very well. And so that's something that I hope to find out more about too, to kind of help us understand and learn what other people are doing and also gain a better understanding of what the best practices are and should be.
That was perfect timing, Derrick.
All right, thanks.
I appreciate you.
All right, no problem.
To our Lunch and Learn. Thank you very much. Evangeline.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you taking your time to share this with all of us. It's very, it's much needed more than ever.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.